Okay. Good afternoon. So this afternoon or today, I'm going to discuss what a C++ function is. Okay. When you write application, especially very simple application, siguro you might notice that it's easier to develop logic because it requires less coding of lines, and it's easier for you to debug it since there are only few codes that are required to run the task. But the problem nowadays is, what if you are going to develop an application that requires not only 100 lines but thousands of lines that is required to develop the project. Ang nagiging problema kasi natin is ang pag-develop ng program, hindi siya yung typical na parating naka-sequence or parating may loop, parating combination ng mga different statements. So, when you build real programs, especially in the industry, there are certain languages, kagaya ng C++ and C# that requires you to write most likely mga 100 plus of codes or lines. And it will become too large and complex to understand how this logic flow into that particular program. So medyo mahirap siya. And sometimes nagkakaroon pa tayo ng problema, most especially kung if this program is too large to handle by one programmer, it will be distributed to other programmer also. Now, the problem now is the logic barrier of different programmers, because we have different set of minds, we have different set of experience. Because of that, nagkakaroon tayo ng conflict. Bakit ganito yung program mo? Ito yung gusto kong mangyari sa program mo. Ang sabi naman ng isa, ito yung naisipan kong strategy para magawa yung task na to. Ang problema, at the end of the day, when you try to merge the task together para maging isang system siya, nagkakaroon ng conflict kasi hindi nagtutugma yung logic ng program nyo para hindi mabuo yung program. Nowadays, in the industry, programmers tend to work on a certain project. Most likely, the task is being given to individual for a certain period of let's say time, and they are required to submit the code, and at the end of the project, i-merge nila yon to make up as one application. Ang problema, yung complexity ng code hindi naiintindihan ng mga different programmers. So because of this scenario, yun ang nagiging dahilan kung bakit napaka-complex ng programming. And to answer this complexity, meron tayong strategy to lessen the complexity of the program, and that is using function. Ang tawag natin yan is modular programming. So in modular programming, the purpose of that is you try to manage the complexity of large tasks. So that's what we call, parang ginagawa mo sa modular programming, divide and conquer. Ano po? So the code now is composed of many different code modules. So ibig sabihin, you are trying to divide the task into sub-modules, and each module is assigned to individual programmers, and at the end of the day, at the end of the project, you try to merge the module without conflicting the other modules to make up the project. So that's the purpose of function. So when you build, it allows developers to take discrete pieces of the system and design and implement the design and the logic without having difficulties to understand the rest. Example, when you write this one, let's say for example, in our example, okay, this is our example. We integrate this cin, and in order to get that input coming from the keyboard, you need to write this statement, right? So actually, this is what you call predefined function. No? We don't really care what the programmers did in order to make this work, but our focus right now is to use them, and we expect that if we use them, it is effective to be used in our program. But behind this, it is a function that is being created, or it is a module that is being created in IOStream. So, hindi natin alam kung ano nangyari. Ang focus lang natin, paano gamitin, when do we need to use it. So, alam na natin, pag kailangan natin ng data sa keyboard na kailangan input, gagamitin natin ng cin. Regardless of what data type it is, gagamitin natin siya. And that's what the purpose of function. When you create a subtask and assign them to a different set of programmers, their focus is to accomplish the task without you having identifying how they come up with the solution. The most important part there is when they submit the task, they provide solution to the problem or to the task. And it's up to you when and how to use them. You follow their logic, you follow the requirements, and at the end of the day, the program that you are trying to develop becomes effective. Something like that. So that's the purpose of modular. So, hindi lahat ng programmer gumagawa ng isang buong project na mag-isa. So, they are composed of different programmers that made up those tasks and combine them to form the one big project. So, when you build large program, so we will be develop a certain task in a certain isolation of what to do with it. So we are free to develop or to add or to apply any logic that we think possible to answer the problem. And when the task is done, we try to submit them to the manager, and the manager will unit test the program. Ang tawag natin dyan is unit testing. Pag sinabi unit testing, tinetest nila yung function na ginawa mo kung paano siya mag-work, anong klaseng complexity ang pwedeng i-apply para ma-test na effective siya doon sa mga certain types of input. So, ganun siya. So, as a developer, rather than thinking of the other part of the program, what you are thinking now is your task to do the specific task assigned to you. So, bahala na sila kung ano yung task nila, but for you as a programmer, ito yung task ko, ito yung magiging focus mo. So, what you need to do after developing the task, i-submit mo siya, so i-consolidate yun na lang after. So, why do we need to apply this one? Why do we need to apply, aside from those other reasons that I mentioned? This modular programming allows us to subdivide, aside from subdivide, make the task can be done individually, or it can be distributed to other developer without conflicting with the logic, depending on the user's or programmer's perspective. The important key is yung idea na ilagay niya doon at yung objective na target niya or na-achieve niya. Ano po? So, when you build large program, so you create or identify the abstraction of those tasks, how the task is being developed or accomplished, and without concerning the details of how those components are implemented. Okay? The purpose of that is to identify the usage. That's the purpose of that. And doing so, it allows us to have a clear specification, understandable, and it allows us to have enough information about what that particular modules can do to our application, or that how that application or module contributes to our application to become more effective. And then, another reason why we use modular is it's easier for us to manage. Okay? It's easier for us to debug certain part. Let's say, for example, in a motorcycle, pag alam mo yung sira na part, yun lang yung part na ayusin mo. Hindi mo kailangan baklasin lahat ng parte ng motorsiklo. Am I correct? So, certain function lang ang pupuntahan mo at yun lang i-fix mo. Let me give you an idea about that. Okay, let me give you an idea. Example, you have a program. Describe ko Okay, ganito itsura pag naka-modular ka. Okay, mamaya ko na-discuss. Ganyan siya. So, you have a main program. Oops, nasobrahan. Sana yun? Anyway, nawala ka. Okay, ganito ang itsura ng modular. You're creating your own set of block, something like that. So, kung may isang block dyan na alam mong mali, doon lang yung focus mo. Gets po? Okay. So, yun. Okay, so, let us identify the objectives. Anyway, introduction pa lang yun. So, objectives. I'm going to describe what function is. Na-discuss ko na. Briefly discuss and identify the components of a function. Distinguish a call functions with or without parameters. Write value and non-value returning function with and without parameters. And demonstrate some commonly used predefined function in C++. Okay. In C++, functions are generally the block of codes or statements that gives the user ability to reuse. This is different from loop because loop only execute statements a certain number of times depending on your needs. But function is a certain block. It's a group of statements, a separate block that you can call anytime or as many time as you want. As many times as you want. So, it's like building a robot that it requires the robot to step left and right. All you have to do is to call the logic step left, call the logic step right. Kasama na doon yung pag-sense niya kung may na obstacles, etc. Ganon. So, it's a separate functionality. So, it allows us to save excessive use of memory, acts as a time saver, and more importantly, it provides a better readability of code. Mas madaling i-read yung code pag naka-modular kasi there are certain part ng code mo na may focus ka. Hindi kagaya nung marami kang code pero mahirap ma-recognize kasi ang daming nilagay ng mga data, variables, ang hirap i-debug. Sa ngayon, siguro, hindi nyo pa masyadong mapapansin kasi nga, maliit pa lang yung program natin pero pag dumami na, yun medyo nakakalito. A function can also perform a specific task without returning anything. So, yun. Okay. Modular programming is breaking a program up into smaller manageable functions or modules. So, function is a collection of statements to perform specific tasks. So, the motivation for modular programming is it simplifies the process of writing programs. Lalo na kung mga big program siya. Sinesimplify nito yung proseso kung paano mo gagawin yung program. Example, I have to develop complex program. So, you have to subdivide those complexity into smaller chunks of pieces of code and then, one at a time, tatapusin mo siya and then, i-reconcile mo lahat yon para mabuo yung program mo. It improves maintainability of a program. How does it improves? When a certain block requires you to update, only that particular block is being updated. Unlike doon sa entire program mo na masyadong marami, lahat yun i-update mo. Okay? So yun. That's the idea of modular programming. So this is what sequence of C++ application looks like. You write a series of statements, conditional, looping, etc. So at the end of the program, nandun yung return, natapos mo execute lahat ng statements. Ganito naman ang paggamit ng methods or function. So sa function, sa modular, hinahati mo yung mga tasks na yon into smaller pieces. Okay, kagaya niyan. So meron ka ng certain block for a specific task or a specific function. Okay, how do we define and call a function? So, we have what we call function call and function definition. You see, function call is statement that causes a function to execute. Since hiwalay siya na block, kailangan tawagin mo siya para magamit mo siya. A function definition is the structure of your function, meaning you define what your function can perform or can do. In a certain function definition, meron siyang header and body part. Sa header part, meron siyang tinatawag na name. Okay, so name, parameter. Okay. And sa body, meron siyang statements and return type. So doon sa header part, papangalanan mo yung function mo. So name of the function and parameter. So a parameter, those are variables that hold the values passed to the function. And the body, these are statements that perform the functions or functions task. And the return type, this is optional. A return type or the value of the function returns to the part of the program that called it. Ibig sabihin, pag ginamit mo yung function na yon, may ibabalik siyang result sa iyo. Okay, let's have some demonstration muna para bago tayo mag-move forward. Okay, so let's say for example, I have the C++ program. Okay. So in order to develop a function, you need to define an access modifier. This is return type, meaning void, meaning wala siyang nire-return. Alam nyo ba na pag ginawa nyo itong void, hindi nyo na kailangan maglagay ng return? Reaction.
Wow, ganun ba? Opo, sir.
Hindi nyo na kailangan maglagay ng return. Hindi ibig sabihin, ang return kasi nilalagay natin siya kasi may int siya. Hihingi niya yung return kasi may int kang nilagay. Pag ginawa mo tong void, hindi mo na kailangan mag-return. Itong ginagawa natin na example, this is a function also. Tawag lang natin is main kasi siya yung unang babasahin ng compiler nyo pag in-execute nyo siya. Okay? Tingnan natin. Compile natin. Tingnan nyo kung may lalabas na error. Oops, meron nga. Void. Tingnan natin void. Or in. 0. Error pa rin. Variable or field. Wala naman tayong ni-return na. Okay. Lagyan natin void. Baka sa C lang yun. C lang wage. But anyway, return an int. Anyway, i-explain ko later kung paano gagawin yun. Wait lang Okay. So ngayon, paano gumawa ng function? So ang function, para magawa mo siya, kailangan define mo siya. Let's say void. Let's say hello. Something like that. Okay. So this is now my function. Kailangan mo siyang i-define. Let's say, this is what you call a return type. Pag sinabing return type, may ibabalik. May ibabalik sa'yo na result. In this case, wala mo na. Call that void. Ano po? Okay. So, display tayo. See out. Hello world. Okay. So now, ang ginawa ko, nag-construct ako ng aking function, say hello. So, i-call ko siya. This is what you call function. So, say hello. Something like that. Okay. So, yun. Compile natin. Ay, wala akong return. Sorry, nakalimutan ko yung return. Hindi nyo yung na-accept. Baliktad ba? Baliktad ata. Yun. Sorry, man. Tagal ma-compile. Okay, so ito na siya. Okay. Wala. Na-compile. Okay, ito na siya. So notice nyo, I have independent code Try ko lang tong tanggalin kasi ang alam ko di na kailangan to eh. So ngayon, this one, I just call the say hello function. So this function may contain any valid C++ statements. Okay? When you say valid statement, you can incorporate cin, you can add conditional, you can add cout, anything that you want from your program. So it's an individual block that you can call as many times as you want. You want to display hello several times, walang problema. Diba? Imagine this function here contains 100 lines of statement and you can call them 4 times without rewriting those 100 lines several times. So that's the purpose of function. Okay? Gets na po? Gets na?
Yes po, sir. Yes,
Yes, sir.
Okay. In my latest compiler of C++, hindi na pala ina-accept yung naka-void ito yung main. Kaya pala nag-error ako kanina. So hindi niya na ina-accept. So this one is the output of the program. Matagal siya lumabas. Hintayin natin. Saan ba? Ito na pala siya. Ayan, hello world. So I just called hello world 4 times. That's why ganyan ang result niya. Okay? So question so far? Question so far?
Sir, yung say hello po sa void, kahit ano yung pwede ilagay.
Kahit ano yung ilagay yung pangalan. Let's say,
Parang variable na rin po siya.
Evaluate. So, lagay natin. Parang ganyan. So, kahit ano pwede nyo ilagay. As long as naka-define siya. Ayun. Kung ilalagay nyo siya, compile natin basta valid keyword siya, hindi reserved words, kahit ano. So when you name your function, make sure descriptive din siya, parang variable name, naka-describe kung anong purpose niya. Okay. Kung ilalagay niyo siya sa baba, kasi minsan nakakalito pag nasa taas, if you try to compile it, sometimes it will not execute. Why? Kasi nasa baba siya, so hindi niya recognize kung sino siya. That's why you need to declare it on the top. So, anong difference? Ito, dinidefine mo na meron kang senet or ginawang function na makikita. Ito yung definition mo. So, notice nyo, hindi nyo siya actually kinukall. Dinidefine nyo siya. So, sinasabi mo sa compiler mo, hey, I created a block called say hello. Evaluate pala. Sorry. Kaya siguro error kanina. Okay. Hey, I created a function called evaluate. So, please recognize it. Makikita mo siya doon sa baba. So, yun ang parang sinasabi niya. Nire-register mo doon sa C++ mo na meron kang dinefine na function called evaluate. Okay? So, yun. So, that's why sometimes, kung sanay na kayo sa function, ilalagay nyo sa taas para hindi na kayo mag-define nito. Function is being written either above nung main or below nung main, as long as may sarili siyang block. Okay? Clear? Clear po?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes
So,
po, sir.
wala pa tayong
Sir,
dinefine na
excuse
parameter.
me po, sir.
Yes.
Sir, excuse me po, sir. Advance lang naman po, no?
Hmm.
Okay, gawa po na may naisip po ako na kasi gets ko na. For example naman, so, gagawa tayo ng void grade calculator, or in short lang natin yung name, gcal. And then doon mismo sa void na gcal, as a function, siya na mismo yung ang bahala sa yung magko-compute ng na grade, tsaka i-average mo na. So ang tanong ko dito sa may part din sa parenthesis, ilan ang kaya sinima mahahawakan, like mga 3 ba or 4? For example, gcal, tapos mabutan ka doon sa input, like B, tas C, and then A,
Actually, ang tawag
nag-represent sa
ang tawag natin dyan is parameter. Actually, kahit ilan. As many as you like. Kaya lang, huwag masyadong madami. Kasi, baka mamaya malito ka na. Huwag masyadong madami. It's like declaring a variable, too many variables na sometimes hindi mo ma-identify kung ano yung purpose niya. Kaya dapat, when you declare a function, dapat yung parameter, ang tawag sa definition na nilalagay dito is parameter. Mamaya discuss ko ha. So later. So kahit ilan pwede. Sagutan ko muna yung tanong mo, pwede kahit ilan. Kahit ilan nilagay mo rito, pwede. Ano po? So balik tayo sa discussion. Okay. So far, ang nabigay ko pa lang is name ng function. Yung body, wala pa ang return. So mamaya, since void siya, wala pa tayong return. Okay, balik tayo rito. So this is the typical function na familiar tayo. Int main. So mayroon tayong return type, integer, main, parameter list. Dito natin ilalagay yung parameter list and yung body, ito yung return. Okay? Okay. Function header. A function header is consist of return type, name, and parameter list. Example, int main. So this only contains return type, integer ang ibabalik sa'yo, a name, pero wala siyang parameter. Ano po? So wala siyang parameter na nakaset. Ibig sabihin, ang kanyang nire-require is blanco pa lang. Ano po? So yun. So wala pa siyang nire-require na kahit ano. So note, there is no semicolon at the end of the header. Wala. Okay? Kasi nga, dinidefine mo yung function mo. If a function returns a value, the type of the value must be indicated. Example, kung kailangan nyo mag-return ng value, may ibabalik sa'yo pag kinol mo siya, naglalagay ka ng data type sa kanya. It's either Boolean, it's either string, character, integer, double, depende kung anong result ang ibabalik sa'yo. If a function does not return a value, its type is void. Ito. Notice nyo si int may return 0 kasi wala naman siya ibabalik pero may return type siya. Dito sa print heading, void siya kasi wala ka namang isusulat na return. Okay? Malinaw po? So make sure the syntax is written or followed properly. Return type, name, parentheses, and the curly brace that defines the block and the body of the function. Okay? So to call the function, you must use the function name followed by parentheses. Kagaya nito. Kinol natin siya kasi dinefine na natin siya. When a function is called, the program executes the body of the function. After the function terminates, the execution resumes at the calling module of call. Example. In our example, we have here hello. So kung meron pa tayo ditong int x equals to 4, cout x, something like that. When you define a function, the same like this, okay, the execution of function proceeds to the function itself. When the line function call is being executed, pupunta siya doon sa inyong function. After finish executing the body of the function, babalik sa dito sa menu, i-execute yun yung mga preceding statement na nag-call sa kanya. Ang nag-call sa kanya is si main. Si main, kinol si function. So after executing this, babalik siya kay main. Kasi may mga line pa siyang i-execute doon. Gets po? Gets?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes po.
So, next. A main is automatically called when program starts. That's why it's important that when you build C++ application, mayroong main function. The main can call any number of functions. Functions can call other functions. Okay, pwede. So, when you have a function, tapos kukul mo din yung another function, pwede. Okay? Okay, function prototypes. The compiler must know the following about a function before it is being called. The name, the return type, the number of parameters, and the data type of each parameter. So there are several ways to notify compiler about function before you call the function. Ito yung ginawa ko kanina. Nag-create ako ng prototype. Okay? So since hindi naman naka-declare sa taas, try natin ha. Try natin dito. So, try natin i-call yung function sa main, tapos i-compile natin. Tingnan natin kung ma-recognize si C++ yung function name ko. Let's say, sample lang. Sample. Okay. Ay, sorry. Sample. So, try natin. Kanina, na-recognize siya. Ngayon, tingnan natin kung ma-recognize pa siya. So, notice nyo, sample was not declared in this scope kasi hinahanap niya. So, the purpose of prototype is for your compiler to recognize that there is a sample function that is being defined in the file itself. Kaya, kung anong nakalagay dito na definition mo, yun ang ilalagay mo sa taas. Meaning, dinideclare mo siya that I have a function prototype. I have created a block called sample. Kanina, hindi ko siya nilagay kasi nasa task na siya. So, recognize na siya ng C++. Pero nilagay ko siya after ng main, hindi na siya recognize sa C++. So, that's why you need to write this one. Okay? Malinaw po?
Sir, sa suggestion niyo po, sir.
Ako ang suggestion ko, kasi minsan nakakalito pag ang int nasa taas or nasa baba. So, I suggest maglalagay din kayo nito. Ako guys, usual ginagawa ko ganito. Yung main ko parati nasa taas, yung mga function sa baba. Yan ang practice ko. Pero may iba, depende kasi sa ano nyo eh. Kung sa kayo sanay. Ang iba ayaw na magsulat nito, kaya nilalagay nila sa taas. May isa akong programming language na ginagamit, yung Python. Pag nag-declare ka ng function, dapat sa taas yan. Ganon. Hindi naman nakakalito kasi, syempre, kung anong language na sinusundan mo, yun naman i-follow mo. Dito kasi kahit alin gawin mo, pwede. As long as, when you define a function, kung nasa taas mo siya nilagay, no need na to define prototype. But when you define a function after the main, you need to provide prototype. Ganun lang naman. So, whether you'll apply any of those particular implementation, as long as you know what rules that you need to follow, gawin nyo. Okay? Okay. Next. So, yun. Prototype. Use function prototype similar to the heading of the function. Kagaya nito. This is what you call a prototype. Okay. So, place prototypes near top of a program. So, program must include either prototype or full function definition before any call of the function. Otherwise, a compiler errors occurs. Kagaya kanina, hindi ako naglagay ng prototype, that's why yung sample function hindi na recognize. When using prototypes, function definitions can be placed in any order in the source file. Traditionally, main is placed first. Kagaya nito sa akin, parating nasa unahan yung main. Pero when I create a function, dinefine ko siya doon sa taas para ma-recognize sa C++. So, lahat ng function ko pwede kong ilagay dito. Something like that. Okay? When using prototypes, function definition can be placed in any order in the source file. Yun na pala. Okay, so yun. Okay. Example, you can pass values into a function at a time. Kagaya nito. So, meron tayong kinol na function, square root. Meron tayong sqrt na function sa C++. Pag nilagay nyo yung mat.h, may square root doon. Malalaman yung square root ng dalawang numbers. Ano po? So, pwedeng dalawa sabay, pwede may expression. Okay? So, since na-discuss na natin yung tawag natin dito, ito, I think, diniscuss na ata to sa inyo, so I no need for further explanation about this. Values passed to functions are arguments. Ibig sabihin, ang parameters, yan yung define. Those are statement that you define in your function. Let's say, for example, when I create a function called sample, kagaya nito, pag naglagay ako ng definitions like num, let's say, this is what you call parameters. Meaning, this function requires this value in order to run. Okay? Now, when you use a function, it requires an argument. An argument is the value that you pass to the parameters of the function. Gets na po? Gets na?
Yes po.
Okay,
Yes,
kasi
sir.
pag kinol mo yung function, hinihingi na yung num. Integer dapat. So, yun yung parameter niya. Pero kung ginamit mo yung function at nagpasa ka ng 4, si 4, ang tawag natin doon sa pag-call nun is argument. Malinaw? Malinaw na ha? Okay, so ngayon, since meron akong definition dito, int num, ilalagay mo din sa taas. Kagaya niya. Yan yung prototype mo. Ito yung definition niya. Okay? Question. Doon sa mga sa mga hindi nakakasabay, pwede po kayo mag-react. Pwede po kayo mag-react. Hello. Hello.
React like yun sa
Pwede kayo mag-react. Hello. Pwede po kayo comment, tanong.
Sir, sa int num po sa loob ng void sample, pwede po yung yung relational operators.
Relational operators, ang pwede lang natin ipasa value. Pero kung argument siya, magre-return yan true or false, so dapat true or false. Kasi ganito, hindi ka dito pwede maglagay ng na nagko-compare ka. Hindi ka pwede maglagay. Like, A greater than 5, ganon. Hindi pwede. Kasi nga, ang nilalagay sa parameter is dapat data type. Okay? Pwede mong gamitin yung relational kung ipapasa mo siya, A greater than B. Pero ang result nito, ipapasa mo, it's either true or false. Kasi evaluate yan eh. So ipapasa mo dito, it's either true or false. So dapat ito, boolean siya. So marireceive niya true or false. Ganon. So again, hindi pwede maglagay ng conditional operator sa parameter. Okay? Question? Next question. Question? Hello? Question po? None. Okay, let me continue. Okay, so yun.
Apo, sir.
Okay, variables in function that hold values passed as arguments are parameters. Okay, so yun. So alternative names, argument, actual parameter, example. Ito, tawag natin dito is argument kasi ipapasa mo sa parameters ng function. So, yan. Next. Okay. Parameters, prototypes, and function headings. For each function argument, the prototype must include the data types of each parameter in its parentheses. Example, kung meron kayong dinefine na parameter sa function nyo, doon sa prototype nyo, i-declare nyo rin siya kagaya nito. Kagaya ng ginawa ko kanina. Sa heading, ilalagay nyo din kung anong dinefine nyo sa loob. Okay? Now, what is a parameter? So, ito yung example. Gawa tayong example. So, in this example, I will be showing a function that has or contains parameters. Saan na ba yun? Okay. So, halimbawa, gawa tayo ng sample na lang para, okay. Let's say, for example, num1, num2. Okay. Copy na lang natin. Okay. So, ibig sabihin, tumatanggap siya ng dalawang number. So, cout. So, if, let's say, cout, gawin natin ganito. Okay, something like that. So in this case, I have ternary operator that compares num1 and num2. Kung ang num1 ay mas mataas, i-display niya si num1. Otherwise, i-display niya si num2. So pag kinol ko siya, magpapasa ako ng dalawang numbers. Required yun. Kasi doon sa definition ng parameters ko sa function, sabi ko, tatanggap siya dapat ng dalawang arguments. Argument 1 is num1. So this is what you call parameters. Okay? So let's try. Please do not be confused. Marami kasi na-confuse sa parameter sa argument. Ang parameter sa function, tawag doon sa laman ng parentheses. Ang argument, laman ng parentheses pag kinol mo na yung function. Malinaw yan, ha? Oops. Parentheses ata kailangan. Saan na yun? Okay. May problema lang ako ng konti. Hindi lumalabas yung value. Okay, display muna natin. Num1. Test natin kung na-receive niya yung laman. Okay. Okay, so in this case, na-receive niya yung 12. So, pinasa ko yung 12 sa num1, din-display ko yung num1, nabasa niya yung 12. Ibig sabihin, gumagana siya. Diba tayo? If, ano yung tanggapin eh? Okay, so ito yung result. So the highest number is being displayed since num1 is higher than num2. So the highest number is displayed. So num2 ang ating na-display. Since ang num1 is lower pala, lower than 14. So 12 is lower than 14, that's why num2 ang na-display si 14. Okay, so ganun. That's how you define a function, and that's how you set parameter to a function, and that's how you pass an argument to when calling a function. Okay? So yun. Sir, di ba parang naging complicated na ata yung program? Now, let me remind you of the discussion that I made when I opening this topic. You need to do this if you have a complex number of tasks. When you say complex, yung medyo masyadong malawak ang topic or masyadong malawak ang processes na dapat yung pagdaanan. Ano po? So, halimbawa, you have several tasks like you need to create a calculator. A calculator must perform addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. So, pwede mong ihiwalay yung pag-compute ng sum, pag-compute ng subtraction, etc. sa different block para nakafocus ka lang per block. Pwedeng ganon. So, nagiging complicated sa tingin nyo kung masyadong maliit yung program, pero kung masyadong malaki, makikita nyo yung objectivity niya maganda, ang epekto niya. Pagka nito, pwede tayong mag-display ng okay, inlay natin para may space. Okay. So, pwede ako mag-call ng block ng kahit ilang beses. Ayan. So, run natin. Okay, naka 45 minutes na tayo. Okay, so kagaya niya. So, 14, 67. Okay. Question so far?
Sir,
Yes.
dito po sir sa ano, sir, ibalik mo niyo, sir, ibalik niyo po, sir.
Yan.
Ito po, sir. Dito po sir, sa void sample, int num1 and int num2. Hindi ba, or pwede ba dapat, sir, na na int num1, tas common, tas num2, kasi kung magkasabay na sara sa iisang int, hindi ba, sir? Or, hindi pwede?
Okay. Sagot dyan, hindi pwede. Why? Bakit? Hindi pwede. Magkaiba kasi ang declaration ng variable, kagaya ng ginagawa natin, sa isang function. Magkaiba po yun. Kasi once naglagay ka ng comma sa isang parameters, o sa isang function, iniisip ng function na pag may comma, nagde-define ka ng another parameter. Okay? For example, when you call a function like this one, kinol mo siya sample. Okay, tingnan mo to. Sinasabi ng IntelliSense natin na pag kinol mo yung sample, humihingi siya ng dalawang argument. Yung isa integer, another is integer, meaning dalawa. Okay? Pag ginawa mo kasi na ganyan, magkakaroon ka ng problema sa declaration niya. Kasi magiging syntax error yun. Okay? Kasi hindi naman to declaration of variable. This is writing a parameter to a function. Okay? Malinaw?
Yes, sir, yes.
Okay. So, yun. Another question?
Sir, sa sample po, sa loob ng sample sa mga value, pwede po siya user input?
Pwede. So, ang gagawin mo lang, siyempre, gawa ka muna ng scene mo. Okay. So, for example, siyempre, gawa ka ng variable. Okay. So, int num1, num2. Ito okay lang na hindi ko siya initialize. Why? Kasi input naman siya eh. 'Di ba? Ibig sabihin magkakaroon siya ng bagong value once na nag-input ka. So ngayon, papalitan natin 'to ng mga data galing sa sorry po. Malikot yung screen. Okay, ganyan. So, ganyan. So, ibig sabihin, right now, my input came from the user and those inputs is being submitted to the function. Ano po? So, ang argument ko dito ng function ko is came from num1 and num2 coming from the user input. So, ipapasa na siya rito. So, pwede na siya. Okay, ganun lang. Pwede magkaibang type kung gusto nyo. This is double. Pwede yun. So, dapat double din yung num2. Hindi pwede magkaibang type. Something like that. Okay? Notice nyo, naging double siya, so dapat ang expectation na dapat na isa-submit natin sa kanya, dapat yung num2 double din. Okay? So this is double also. Okay? So yun. Balik natin. Nangyari. Oh. Nasira. Okay, but anyway, okay, so now, okay. Question so far? So I guess none, okay. So for each function argument, the prototype must include data type of each parameter in the list. That's why meron tayong, okay, pwede naman daw, instead of may num, data type na lang. Okay, try natin. Para ma-lesser yung effort mo pag-type ng function definition. Okay, ito yung problema ko dito, kasi namali ako ng Okay, cout. Okay. Run natin ulit. Okay, so ito na siya. So 5 is the highest. Kung galing sa user, int and num1, num2, si int, num1, num2, palitan natin. Okay. Okay. Run. Okay. So, no need to mention sa taas, prototype, yung, let's say, 89, 56. So, 89 is the highest. Okay, so gano'n lang. By the way, don't worry kung ang variable nyo is parehas. Don't worry if your variable in your parameters is the same with the declaration in your main, because this is, this will not conflict the variables. Okay? Kasi when you declare variable inside the main, the lifespan of this variable is until the curly brace lang naman. So it's, since these two are separate blocks, so they will not, it will not encounter any difficulty on defining or conflicting with the variable names. Okay? It's like this one is house number 1, house number 2. The num1 in house number 2 will not conflict the num1 in house number 1. Okay? Since they are declared inside, not outside. Okay? Here. Okay, the function call for the above would like this. Okay, ganito. Pwede naman. So, function call meaning kinukol mo yung function. Ha? That's why it's val. Ito, this is prototype. Prototyping. Ito, function call. Okay. Value of argument is copied into the parameter when the function is called. So, that's why, a while ago, kung anong in-input ko dito, nilagay ko dito na value, it is being copied doon sa ating parameters ng function. So, pag nilagay ko dito 4, yung 4 papasok dito sa num1. Okay? So, there must be a data type listed in the prototype. Okay? That's why hindi pwede yung int num1, num2. Each individual dapat may data type. And an argument declaration in the function heading for each parameter. Arguments will be promoted, demoted as necessary to match parameters. If ever na magkaibang type pero valid conversion siya, like double and single, di ba? Pwede yun. Kasi double and single are same family with the same numbers with decimal point. Okay? Okay, calling function with multiple arguments. So, when calling a function with multiple arguments, just like what I did a while ago, the number of arguments in the call must match the function prototype and definition. The first argument will be copied into the first parameter and the second argument into the second parameter, etc. Just like in this example. So, we have a function definition that has two parameters, h and w. When the function is being called, ipapasa natin yung laman ng height and width doon mismo sa parameter kung saan mo siya inassign or inallocate. Okay? So that's the note. Okay? So yun. Next is pass by value. In previous example, ang tawag natin sa pagpasa ng argument sa parameter ni function is pass by value kasi value lang pinapasa mo. So, which means, let's say for example, ginawa natin si num equals to 4, num1, num2 equals to 8, you are passing the value of 4 and 8 doon sa ating function. Now, what if ginawa natin ganito? Num1 is equals to 5, num2 is equals to 6. What do you think? Is the variable inside the main will be affected by what we have done in function? Do the variable in function main will be changed or affected by the changes that we have made in function? Yes or no?
Yes po.
May nagsagot ng yes. Good
I
answer.
think
May
that
sumagot.
is kasi sa sa pinakauna pa na lesson yung sa destruction ba? Yung destructive number.
Saan yun? Yes or no? Tingin nyo. Sa tingin nyo lang?
Yes,
Yes.
po.
Ah,
Mapapal.
yes. Okay. Actually,
Depende.
Hindi. Actually, hindi. Why? Bakit hindi? Kasi once na dineclare mo yung num1 dito, kagaya ng na-mention ko kanina, ang left span niya hanggang dito lang. So, ibig sabihin, ang ginawa natin kanina is pass by value. When we say pass by value, pinasa mo yung value ng variable doon sa parameter ni function. Kaya kahit baguhin mo to, kasi ito, this is now carries the value of the past value. Ibig sabihin, ang binabago mo na dito is yung laman nito. Pero hindi ito. Nagki-create ka ng 4 na memory. Iyon po. Yung para kay num1, para kay num2, ito yung para sa main. Okay? Nagki-create ka ng 4 na memory allocation. Ito naman para kay sample, which is they have num1 variables also in num2. So therefore, these two variables are independent with one another. When you set num1 equals to 4 and num2 equals to 8, these two variables, when called, this is also handles 4 and 8. Since inside your function, you modify the value of num equal to 5, ito lang yung nababago mo, but not the value of the main program. Ito, hindi ito nababago, ito lang. Kasi ang left span nito hanggang dito lang din. So, pag kinol mo to, ito lang yung makukol mo, but not the variable inside the main. Gets po? Gets na? Gets na?
Yes, sir.
Okay, gawa tayo ng ano ha.
Okay, opo.
Okay na, sure ha? Sure. Sure. Again, ha? Again, para hindi nakakalito. Okay. Sige. Okay, screenshot natin to. Okay, screenshot natin yan. Gawa tayo ng bagong PowerPoint presentation para makapagsulat ako. So let's illustrate the discussion that I made. Okay. Okay. So okay na. So okay. Ngayon, ito yung illustration natin. So in this example, ito siya. So when you declare variable num1 and num2 sa main, ang left span niya hanggang dito lang. Nagkakaroon ka na ng hiwalay na block. That is the basic idea. And this is another block. We call that house. So this one is created inside this house. So therefore, the left span of this is only inside this house. Now, when you pass a value, let's say num4, this 4 will be passed into the parameters of sample function definition. Also, 8 is also passed here. So right now, we have variable for sample, we call that num1 and num2. So whenever that the value is changed, the only variable that is being changed is the variable inside the function. In this one, this will not be affected. So therefore, when you display the value of num1 and num2 inside the main, still the value of num1 is 4 and the value of num2 is 8. Gets na po? Gets na?
Opo,
Hello?
sir.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Mabuti naman at clear na. Okay. Cut ko lang. Ayaw may stop. Okay. Ngayon, That's what you call pass by value. So changes to the parameter in the function does not affect value of the argument in the calling function. So hindi daw mababago. Okay? O kagaya ng ganito, di ba? So yun, na-explain ko na. Okay. Now, return. The return statement used to end execution of a function. It can be placed anywhere in a function. So any statements that follow the return statement will not be executed. It can be used to prevent abnormal termination of the program. So without a return statement, the function ends at its last. Okay. Anong ibig sabihin ng mga statement na yon? Okay. Ibig sabihin nun, kung meron kayong return, let's say, this is displayed in your screen. Return CL. This will be ignored. Okay, so let's try to run. Okay. So this is my output. So notice nyo, when we call the function sample, it transfers the value of 4 and 8, and the num1 will be 5 and 6. Now, notice, the last statement, this will be ignored. Hindi talaga siya display. Why? Because of the return statement. Do you still remember the break statement in loops? Naalala nyo pa ba? Pareha sila ng effect nun. Ang return, ibig sabihin, mag-i-exit ka na sa function. Hindi mo na i-execute ng mga preceding lines sa loob ng function. Kagaya nito, the only statement that is being executed is 3 lines. This one and this one is being ignored because of the return statements. Saan siya madalas ginagamit? Ginagamit siya if ever you have met a certain condition that the last statement should not be executed any longer. Since the statement inside the function will execute the entire statements, having return will allows you to have an option to make other statement optional. Kagaya nito. Diba? Maybe, halimbawa, if input is equal to no, then you are going to exit automatically in the function without executing other statements. Okay? Gets? Gets po? Gets? Hello? Hello? Na-lose connection ako.
Kaya po ko pa man asking questions, no?
Oh, yadi na. Yadi na ako. Ay ba?
Di pa nga. Good afternoon, sir.
Okay, naputol ako. Kasi ang time natin is hanggang 3:30 lang ata tayo. Kaya naputol na ako. Automatic kasi tig-shut off na ng ano. But anyway, so yun. So, nakuha yung last explanation ko. Nakuha.
Hindi po, sir. Nag-choppy ka po.
Opo, sir, nagmala alien po. Glitch po ito kanina eh.
Okay, explain ko Doon ba yan sa return?
Yes, sir.
Return, ano? Okay, so this is an example. So, Do you still remember the break statement sa loop? Naalala niyo pa ba 'yon? Naalala niyo pa ba?
Yes.
Opo.
Oh, 'di ba ang break, pagka nilagay mo ng break, ang loop ma-stop, correct?
Of course, of
Yes.
course.
So when you create a function kasi, it's like this. It is a must in a function that every statement inside the function should be executed. Okay? So, execute nyo yun. What if there is a certain situation that a certain statement should not be executed unless otherwise it satisfies a condition. Like this, for example, when you run this application, ang makikita lang natin is ito. Ito lang, message. This is displayed in
Sir,
the
wala
screen.
po naka-present.
Ay, sorry. Sorry man. Thank you. Ay, nag-lost connection ako. Umihina na yung connection. Siguro may problema na sa date sa
Next time.
Okay lang. Sige. Okay na ba? Okay na.
Meron na po.
Okay. So this one is the statement. So when you put return, there are certain cases kasi that when you put, there are certain statement that it must be executed or not, depending on the particular condition. Ano po? May mga ganong klase kasi ng nilalagay. Kasi required kasi sa function execute to lahat. But what if may execute lang to kung may mamet ka na condition? So, in order to make this optional, maglalagay ka ng return. Halimbawa, meron kang if condition. If, let's say, x equals to 0, so, end mo na yung program, di ba? Or function. Kasi nga, since required to lahat na execute, putting this statement, pwede mo nang i-cut yung execution hanggang dito. Eto, ignored na siya. Nakuha yung point, parang break sa loop. Nakuha niyo yung point? Nag-guess niyo yung point? Hello?
Sir Choppy po, Sir Choppy.
Sir Chappy po.
Okay lang, sige. Nagkakaproblema tayo sa internet. But anyway, ganito. Okay na ba? Kaya man, nawala ako.
Sa another tumambag sa work plan pakatapos ito.
May nangyari
Okay
ba
lang
sa
ba?
event? Ba sa minention ni Sir? Parang wala naman ata.
Good afternoon, sir.
Oh, ano yun?
Ayan, sir. Good
Ano
afternoon.
pinag-usapan nyo?
Hello, sir.
Oh, nawawala yung connection eh. Anyway, so yun. Yun nga sabi ko, para
Nakamute ka
siyang,
po, sir.
yun nga sinabi ko, para siyang break sa loop. So when a return statement is encountered by your function, so it will stop executing the rest of the statement below it. So, depende sa condition. If there are situation that kailangan nyo apply, so at least magagamit nyo siya. Okay. I-shortcut ko na. Okay, shortcut ko na ha. Okay. What if, kasi may return tayo dito, meron din siyang return na gumagamit ng expression. Ano po? Halimbawa ito, a value that return, a value coming from the function. Okay? So, anong ibig sabihin nun? Ibig sabihin may binabalik siya. Halimbawa, define tayo. Okay. Para mas mabilis, lagay ko na sa taas. Okay. So,
Sir, wala po ulit naka-present.
ay, sorry po. Nalilimutan ko eh. Okay. For example, gagawa ko ng program na nagre-return ng value. Ibig sabihin, may binabalik sa'yo na result. Okay. So, halimbawa, declare tayo ng int. Huwag na tayo mag-declare ng int. Gawa na lang tayo ng ano. Okay. So, for example, gawa tayo ng okay. Okay. So, when you declare a value returning function, hindi na siya void. Kung kanina, ginawa natin, nagre-return ng value. This time, hindi na. Ano po? So, nilagay ko na lang sa taas para nawala ulit. Ay, nawala ulit. Okay na ba? Okay na? Okay na ba? Nawawala eh. Okay na ba?
Nawawala-wala po, sir.
Okay, last na tong example. Last na to. Okay. Ang oras eh. Okay, magpe-present ako ng bago. Okay, present now. Anyway, maglalagay naman ako ng module nito. So, na-advance lang yung presentation. Okay. Okay na ba? Okay
Yes,
na ba?
sir.
Okay. So, for example, this one determines if the value is odd or even. Okay. Okay. Return pala na, no? Okay, so for example, cout. Ganito na lang. Sum na lang. Compute sum. Get sum. Okay. Num2. Return int number equals num1 plus num2. Return no. Okay. So, ano mangyayari ito? So, this is what you call a function that returns. This time, instead na void, since may return na siya, gagamit ka na ng data type. Since ang nire-return nito ay integer dapat, so ilalagay ko dito int. So, this is a getSum function that accepts two parameters. So, we have num1, num2. So, sinasum niya, binabalik niya yung sum. So, cout natin. So, para magamit mo siya in your main program, so, pwede tayong directly pumunta sa cout para i-call yung function at magpasa ng value, let's say, 4, 5 or 5, 4. So, what will happen to this is, when you call a function, you pass 5 and 4 as argument. So, papasok dito yung 4, yung 5, papasok dito, at yung 4, papasok dito. So, therefore, 5 plus 4, that would be 9. So, si 9, papasok yun sa num. At, i-return ng function mo, yung 9, pabalik dito. So, try natin ha. Dapat may makita tayong 9 sa screen. Okay, compile ko lang. Compiling. May dati pala ako naka-compile, sorry. Okay. So last example na to, huwag kayong mag-alala. So hintayin natin matapos yung compiling niya. Okay, so ito na siya. So notice nyo, may nabalik siyang value doon sa ating main program, yung 9. Kasi dito, meron na siyang process na ginawa at binalik niya yung value. Ano po? So that is a function returning. Ano po? So returning a value returning function siya. Okay? Clear? Question? Question po. Question?
None.
Wala na po, sir.
Wala. Okay, gagawa pa rin naman ako ng module nito. Medyo advanced lang yung discussion ko since walang tanong kanina. So, i-upload ko yung PowerPoint presentation, tapos i-upload ko yung activity. Pero wag niyo munang isipin kasi di pa naman yun kailangan or required. Kailangan nyo munang i-focusin yung exam. Siguro magiging available yung submission is next week pa naman. Okay? So ngayon, focus muna kayo sa exam. I-upload ko lang yung attendance para makapag-attendance kayo. Okay, wait lang ha. Okay. So as soon as makapag na kayo, sign up sa attendance. So habang piniprepare ko yung attendance, siguro mga 2 minutes lang naman to. Makakapag-attendance na kayo. Madali lang ha. Baka may tanong kayo regarding sa yung mga bagong dating or yung mga late na dumating. Baka may tanong kayo. Pwede niyong itanong para may time ako nasagutan yung tanong niyo. Sige na po.
Sir, naka-record po ito, sir.
Yes.
Naka-record po ito, sir.